It's crazy.
And ladies and gentlemen, I start every episode by saying that. We're back.
Okay.
It is your favorite podcast, the number one rated in the world, Keepin It Rio Podcast, and that is by my rankings. Joe Rogan has now dipped to number 2 in my book, but we're gonna bridge the gap a little bit here. We're gonna gap him a little because today's guest is going to be absolutely amazing. I know that because we just met 3 minutes ago.
Yeah,
And
3 minutes ago.
I'm already feeling the energy. So with no hesitation whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to welcome my guest to the show, episode 210, Mrs. Emily Bonds. Emily, welcome to Keepin It Rio. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I just finished arm day at my boot camp, so I can't really move, and this is like the only position I can sit in. They made us do all these bicep curls today, and I thought I was going to die, but I didn't die. Hence, I'm on the internet now. But I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Today was my leg day, so I'm actually sitting in a chair, and I don't know if you can tell, but I've got it kind of angled this way. I have no shoes on, and I've got my feet propped up on an ottoman, and I'm in my lazy boy, which is how I love to do the podcast. So
awesome.
We've already found common ground. Both of us are like wondering why we do these things for fun. And, then we wonder.
My leg day was supposed to be Wednesday, and I might have used the excuse that we had Wednesday night church, even though we're not having Wednesday night church during spring break. It's spring break here in Katy, Texas, which is the best suburb of Houston. I might have used that as an excuse just so I didn't have to go to leg day.
I can appreciate it. I'll tell you a quick story before we get deep into the podcast here. I went to a kickboxing class about 6 months ago, and I feel like I'm in pretty decent shape. I lost almost 100 pounds over a 4-year period, and I'm very active. I go to the gym 5-6 days a week. I did 1,500 miles of hiking last year as well. So I feel like, hey, I can go do some kickboxing. I still feel like a kid. Well, I get in there, and they start off with a 30-minute session where it's just like me and this trainer, right? And I'm thinking that this is the whole package. So I'm going all out, and I'm doing really well, and I'm feeling good about myself, hitting the bag and making all these cool kicks. And the 30 minutes is up, and I see some more people coming in. So I'm like, all right, cool. Well, thanks. That was awesome. And the guy's like, no. That was just the warm-up. Now is the 30-minute training session. So you're going to be training with these people. And I got about 15 minutes in, and I could definitely feel that it was going to be something that was probably not going to be favorable for my stomach, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, definitely.
I faked an eye injury. I faked that my contact lens got messed up in my eye. So I said, I got to go real quick. I ran to the bathroom, and I threw up like 4 times. I threw water on my face, and I stood there trying to make it seem like I didn't just throw up. And then I walked back out, and they were like, are you all right? Do you want to continue? And I told him, no, my eye, it's so messed up. And I was
my eye that's located in my mouth, my eye.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm so hurt. And I think they knew that I was faking, but nobody really judged me, at least until after I left. But
exactly.
Here's to making up stories sometimes to get out of doing strenuous activities.
Yeah. They didn't judge you to your face. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and I'm glad, because I think they could have all beat me up, because I was watching them do their kickboxing, and I think they knew I was the weakest link. So that's a fun little story that I've never shared with anybody before. Now the world knows I'm a fake.
Now we know.
It's all good. Whatever. I'm too old to be a kickboxer, so we're good. I'll just stick to roofing. But anyways, Emily, thank you for taking the time to be here on Keepin It Rio. This episode airs on Thursday evening, but right now it's Friday evening, and you're in Houston. I'm in San Antonio. We were just talking about how great the weather is in both places, and I would like to ask you a very simple thing. Tell us a little bit about yourself. That's how I love to start my interviews. And then we'll just go from there, and wherever the road takes us, we'll just drive down it.
So I am a wife and mother. I work in insurance. That's like the basic. For fun, I like to go to Burn Boot Camp. They have several in San Antonio, by the way. I can hook you up. And I also do pageants. Do you want to see something cool?
Yes.
Okay. So
we're starting off with something cool.
I have my crown. Isn't it cool?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with the headphones. Otherwise, I would have pinned it on my head. and also I don't have enough blush on to be a real beauty queen. But yeah,
Me
this is
neither.
my.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I know. You should go with some red. You'll be great. Well, you could, and then you could put some on your nose, and you could be Santa Claus. Not really
Nice.
though. But yeah, this is my crown, and I do pageants to as a gateway to talk about sobriety and the dangers of substance abuse. I, for a long time, was addicted to alcohol, which, fun fact, is the largest abused substance in the world. I was the best at drinking, just like I'm the best at everything. But the problem was I was so good at it, I was missing out on my life. And about January 8th of 2021 is when I stopped drinking. My husband and I were on our 10-year wedding anniversary in Denver, Colorado. And we went out drinking starting at like 8 a.m. because that's when the bars opened. And we drank until midnight-ish. We got back to our hotel, which, as a reminder, this was COVID times, and people really wanted you to travel to like stimulate the economy. So we got like $100 flights from Hobby Airport to Denver. We only had to pay $400 total for all of our plane tickets, and we got a suite at the Hyatt in downtown Denver that's usually like thousands of dollars. It was only like $150 a night, and it was one of those suites where like it had 2 bathrooms and a giant living room and a giant master suite. So it was nice. It was a nice place. But I told my husband, I told him like, hey, I feel like I'm going to be really sick, and I always prided myself on being able to hold my liquor. So I told him, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll see you in a little bit. And I proceeded to not just vomit profusely, I passed out. And when I woke up, I tried to sit up. At the time, I had longer hair. I tried to sit up, but my hair was frozen to the bathroom floor. And I was like, how in the tarnation am I going to get up? So I had to take my hand and like shimmy my hair off the floor. And when I sat up real slow, because when you're very drunk, everything moves. I sat up and I realized I was about this far from hitting the toilet bowl. And if I had fallen a little differently, I probably would have drowned in the toilet bowl when I blacked out. So I was like, oh man, that's bad. And so I stood up and I looked at myself in the mirror, covered in vomit, and I had thrown up so hard that my eyes were like just bloodshot. And I heard this little voice and it said, "Are you done yet?" And I was like, who's talking to me? There's nobody in this room. And it said again, "Are you done yet?" And I realized that it was God talking to me. And I had someone that had grown up in the church. I got baptized at an early age. We were greeters at our church. We had a Second Baptist, which was a huge Baptist church here. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. And if you'll help me, I'll help other people. And January 8th, 2021 was the last time I've had a drink of alcohol. And it hasn't been easy. Like, life has happened. We've had obstacles to overcome. Family members have passed away, but I've kept that promise, and being on podcasts and doing pageants, that's how I share my story. And that's why I'm here.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is, I've actually had some guests in the past that have had similar stories like that of waking up in weird places and wondering what was going on. And it's, that's an alarming moment in life for sure. So let me ask you this. Okay. We're going to kind of unpack this a little bit and, figure out how you got to that point where you were laying there with your hair frozen to the floor and, not feeling it anymore. How did you get to that stage to where you were, getting that intoxicated on a regular basis and, kind of still surviving and making it through life?
Well, it's not the weirdest place I ever woke up. But my husband and I got married really young. We were 23. We actually just celebrated our 14th year of marriage. And he and I were talking about, it was on Wednesday, and he and I were talking about all the things that we did in our youth that were, it was really God protecting us. I actually passed out at a restaurant during our first year of marriage. I still have no memory of it, but apparently I just laid down in the floor in the middle of a restaurant because the floor was cold. So it's really great I didn't get like a public intoxication charge against me. But as far as like going backwards, I started drinking in college, really. And I never drank in high school. I came from a really small town, Mount Vernon, Texas, which is if you go to Dallas and you drive 100 miles towards Arkansas, when you have to stop and go to the bathroom, that's where you stop at the Love's Truck Stop.
Nice.
Very, very small town. Didn't drink at all in high school. Was very motivated, very studious. I was on the basketball team. I showed livestock. I was the girl. But I ended up going to Baylor University for my first 2.5 years of college, and I did not fit in there. These were kids that had private tutors to help them get into Baylor. They had SAT coaches. They had real geometry teachers that didn't just tell old Vietnam War stories. Like it was a little different where they came from. But that's when I started drinking. I had so much anxiety about going to class, doing homework, basically anything. I'd gotten to the point where I joined a sorority, and going to the sorority meetings were stressful because I didn't understand some of the business lingo they were using. And I just felt so out of place. And I had somebody that would buy me Boone's Farm. I don't know if you remember that from back in the day. It was 88 whole cents.
Indeed. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. It was 88 cents. That and the Hard Mike's lemonades. I had somebody that would buy me that. And at some point I was mixing those together. I don't know how long I did that, but that didn't really taste very good. But I just drank just to do my homework. I was even having anxiety doing math homework, writing papers, and magically I would get almost blackout drunk, write these papers, and I would get A's. I would get hundreds. Didn't make any sense. But that's when the drinking really started, to answer your question.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's interesting to me because I was anticipating you to say I started drinking to fit in and to be cool, but it seems like you were doing it basically by yourself. Mm-hmm. Just because you didn't feel good about the situation you're in, and that's unique. Boone's Farm, I'll tell you, that's a trip down memory lane.
I know everyone else was drinking that in high school, and I was drinking it in college. And and it was really good to go to like Sonic and get just a thing of ice in the route. And I think is it Route 66, Route 64, whatever. Getting that full of ice, and then you could put the Boone's Farm over it, and it just looked like a cherry limeade, and nobody said anything.
There you go.
We're
not condoning that to anybody that's watching at this point. Some of my roofer friends just got an idea now, so it's like, okay,
don't get on a roof drunk. I don't think that would be a good idea.
Well, you'd be surprised, but that's a different story for a different day. So you get into this, and you start, trying to mask the feelings that you're having inside about not feeling like you belong or you're out of place. And it starts getting a little bit more and more to the point where you're drinking out of Sonic cups and doing all that stuff, but still fully functioning and still getting good grades. So I would have to guess at this point, you're probably thinking, well, you know what, who am I really hurting? Because I'm still the smartest kid here. And tell me a little bit about how you were able to go through day-to-day life and activities without people recognizing the fact that you were masking your pain by drinking throughout the course of the day. And, I love what you just said about how you didn't catch any charges. And I think that's awesome because, nobody wants that. But how was a day in the life of Emily as she starts this path before you get married, you're starting to drink. What's the daily routine like for you?
Oh, it was have a little sip before class, go to class, have a little sip before the sorority meeting, come home, drink the rest of the bottle of Boone's Farms so you can do your homework. And then I never I didn't have, I was young then, so everything just goes through your body. And I just get up, no hangover, and just, okay, time to keep going. It was wild. I never drank and drove, never did that. But yeah, that's how I operated for basically 4.5 years when I was in school. I just operated that way, and nobody knew. I lived in a house with a bunch of girls at one point, and they actually drank more than I did. They were binge drinkers. And I thought I was better than them because, they just go out and drink all the time. And I'm at home by myself. I'm not hurting anybody. Just like you said, I'm not hurting anybody. It wasn't until fast forward almost a decade later when we had our first son, and I was day drinking when he was down for his nap. I didn't think I was hurting anybody. I was a stay-at-home mom. I wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't hurting anybody while I was making dinner and having a glass of wine. And when my husband would get home, I'd make him whatever it is I found on Pinterest to make him, and having a cocktail with him. I wasn't hurting anybody. Really, I was just drowning in anxiety and other, self-doubt. And while that doesn't hurt anybody, technically, I was hurting myself. And when you're a kind of a broken person and you're functioning in life, you're affecting other people. You just don't realize it. And maybe the people around you don't realize it either.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And you're right, because in a lot of cases, people just, they know you for who you are and they don't really think anything of it, especially when you're in an environment that you haven't been around. You've moved away from your small town. So your friends that you've known your whole life who would probably say, look, Emily, you got a problem right now. They're not there to catch that for you. You're just kind of blending in with the people that are around you, and you're harming yourself as you go. So you talked a little bit about, your time through college. You get married right out of college, right? Just shortly thereafter. And
got married 90 days later.
Nice.
I graduated in December of 2010, but I really wanted to get married in June of 2010 when my husband graduated. He graduated in May, and I wanted to get married in June. I wanted to be a June bride, and then my diploma would have Emily Bonds on it. Oh no, hold on.
Oh,
hold on? Nope, decline. Where did you go?
I'm right here, Emily. Can you see me? I can see you.
No. Is it here? Google Chrome. Okay. Sorry. I didn't realize that my laptop was hooked to my phone, and if I got a FaceTime call, it would show up on the computer.
Nice. Sometimes it happens like that. That's the joy of these podcasts. And like I say, I don't edit this, so the world is going to see what just happened.
Yeah. So
I feel like in that 15 seconds, we handled it like pros. I was making funny faces and keeping the entertainment going. So continue on with the story as if that never happened.
Decline. I don't want to talk to you, Mother.
Oh, yeah. I know how that goes.
Yeah. So what was I talking about?
You were getting married. You wanted to get married in June.
I wanted to get married in June, but my dad's in finance. He was like, yeah, you can't get married in June because I need to be able to claim you on my 2010 taxes so I can get the educational tax credit.
Nice.
So we got married 90 days after graduation, after I graduated. And, we had a great time in our first 5 years of marriage. We did all the things. We lived in North Dallas, so we were close to SMU, which is where the rich people party. And we bar hopped. We had a house. My in-laws, I don't think they trusted my husband and I to make apartment payments. So they had a rental house, and it had a pool. So we had pool parties all the time. We put a grill out there. We were grilling out, drinking beer, doing what you do when you're in your early 20s. It's amazing that nobody had an accident at the pool, because we would have everybody over, all of our friends. We were the party house because we had a house. So we were having a good time, and all of that came to a screeching halt when we had our son, because you can't have 25 people over at your house, swimming in the pool when you have a baby that you're trying to sleep train. Can't do that.
That was the defining moment right there in life, where it's like, okay, now things have to change a little bit, and we can't be having all that. Yeah, right.
I'm a real adult. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that realization hits you, you're now not going to be having the pool parties, not going to be having all the people, not going to be the cool house where everybody comes to get messed up. Tell me a little bit about the transition at that point, because it's almost like now you have to kind of distance yourself, I'm sure, from some of your friends, because a lot of your friends were only there for the party and they weren't really friends. Tell me a little bit about how that transition worked out for you as far as a life-changing event, and how that affected you as far as, your habits. You were having to make changes, but probably still wanting to do some of the things that you were doing. So how did that look for you as far as that transition in life at that young age?
Yeah. So not only was there that transition, I got laid off while I was pregnant. And I fully expected that, I didn't see that coming. I didn't know you could lay off a pregnant person. But I had fully expected to, go back to work, continue killing it at work, and just being a working mom. I fully thought that's what it was going to be. But I was at home with this little baby. My husband took no time off work. And I was just trying to figure out how to be a mom by myself. I was literally by myself all the time. And my well-meaning pediatrician, and of course, when you're newly postpartum, you're kind of in a daze anyway. I know she said it because my husband confirmed that she said it. She said that if I wanted to up my milk production, that I should have a dark beer, because stouts help with milk production, allegedly. So instead of having just one stout beer, I had two, because I'm an overachiever and I'm going to make the best. I'm going to make all the milk, right? Like, I'm going to do it all. So I would literally I would have a beer in this hand, and I was like feeding the baby with another, because the doctor also said if you drank and breastfed at the same time, it wouldn't get in your milk. So I totally, I was like, why not? So I would, have two of those a day. And then when the baby went down for a nap, I was by myself. So it was me and the women of the View. And I think at that point, Kathy Lee and the other lady that was on that, Hoda, I think is her name, they were like having wine at 11 o'clock on television. So I had a mimosa right along with them, maybe two, maybe four. And I I'd take Brady to the park, and we would go to the park. And after he would go down for his nap, it was mimosa time. And then cooking dinner time was time to have a glass of wine. And then making, during dinner, it was red wine time or it was whiskey time. And before you know it, I've had like 7 to 10 drinks during the day. And it wasn't like I wasn't sitting there trying to just get drunk all the time. I was just trying to maintain a happy-go-lucky demeanor. And again, I didn't think I was hurting anybody. I was hurting myself.
Yeah. And I mean, I can definitely appreciate that, because like you say, it's a huge life change. And all of a sudden you go from having people around to just being there by yourself. And that's tough. Yeah. And I can definitely understand the thought process. And I understand what you mean when you say, I wasn't sitting there trying to get drunk. It was just kind of there. There was nothing else really going on. It was you and a baby. Yeah. And can't really carry on a great conversation with a baby, at least, not for the first couple years. So you're doing what you're doing because, what else is there at that point?
Yeah,
and
it's like you can roll over. Yay.
Right. Hey, cheers to you. Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I get it. And that's I think one of the most common things that people say is, I wasn't really intending to do that. It just was happening. And then at the end of the day, you stop and realize, oh my gosh, I drank like 3 bottles of wine today. Mm-hmm. And I, still maintained, still got everything done. So it's not like I'm hurting anybody. That's the common theme that we keep coming back to.
Yeah.
And you're going through life, you're doing your deal. Tell me a little bit about the career. You just said you got laid off when you were pregnant. Mm-hmm. At that point, okay, you go from a 2-income family to a single income family. You've got a baby. There's probably a lot of stress.
We had no money. We were so poor. Hence why we were eating a lot at home. I was finding random, every day, almost every day, I would put the baby in the stroller and we would walk to Aldi because it was cheaper to walk. We wouldn't have to use gas. We would walk to Aldi and I would have my like random recipe that I found on Pinterest and try to make it match with whatever was at Aldi, and then come home and attempt to cook dinner with a, crying infant child. And it was definitely not how I saw my life going at the time. But I ended up going back to work when he was around a year old. We never got into like credit card debt, but we were struggling because at one point I had to stop feeding the baby and he needed formula, and the formula he needed, that child, he's still high maintenance. He only would drink pre-made soy baby formula, which, just so you know, that stuff was expensive then and it's very expensive now. And at the time in Dallas, you could only buy it in person from 2 or 3 places. And I was one of the original Amazon delivery people because I would literally buy pallets of it and have it delivered to the house. Pallets. Because that's all he would drink for the first, I stopped breastfeeding him when he was like 8 months old. And literally for 4 months, that's all he could, he was having some solids, but not a lot. And so we were broke from buying all this expensive baby formula. And I told my husband, I was like, do I need to go back to work? And he was like, yeah, you need to go back to work. We don't have any money. So we put the baby in Mother's Day out. My mother-in-law watched him 2 days and he went to Mother's Day out 3 other days. And I went to work in insurance, my first job in the industry. Oh, there was a fly there. It was a very entry-level job. It was perfect for someone re-entering the workforce. It was basically fancy data entry. And it paid $37,000 a year, which was absolutely nothing. It was worse than a first-year teacher. But I just needed money. And they paid me money.
Yeah, that's the harsh reality of life sometimes, is when you get to that moment where it's like, hey, I got to do it. And you get into a position. So you've transitioned again now. Here we're going from, college to getting out to being married to having a kid. Another life transition is you have a 1-year-old who you were watching and you were spending all your time with, and now you're going back into the workforce. Mm-hmm. And as we've already uncovered from previous conversations, the anxiety was what kind of led you to this habit in the first place. Mm-hmm. This can't be something that you feel super great about, leaving your baby at 1. So let's talk about the next transition that you go through. You get back into the workforce. You've got an entry-level position. You're doing it. You're showing up. You're making money. You're getting yourself back, above water as far as finances go. Tell me about the emotions that you felt as you were doing this, and did that impact your habits any further beyond that?
Well, I couldn't drink during the day anymore. I had to go to my big girl job. And really, we just, we drank it home. We would get, it was called Lakewood Temptress. It was a dark beer. I had developed a taste for stouts and Belgium quads, which I don't even know what a Belgium quad is, but I liked it. So we would buy these very expensive beers at home. We would drink them, and we just 2-3 beers a night, because I thought that was normal, because that's what you see on TV. People just go out and drink all these beers, and that's kind of how we lived. I think at I was probably having anywhere between 10 to maybe 15, 17 drinks a week, which for women is way too much. But that's what we did. And we would, one of the first videos, my son's name is Brody. One of the first videos I have of him is we were at a Baylor Young Professional happy hour, and we taught him how to cheers, because we were at the bar. Cheers. He was eating his mac and cheese and, going cheers with a sippy cup. And that is not at the time, we thought it was so funny. But really, why did we have a 1-year-old at a bar? Like, that's not where we needed to be. It's just crazy to think about now, like the choices we've made. We have a 3-year-old. The choices we've made with him versus the choices we've made with our now 9-year-old, it's completely different.
Well, and that's a sign of maturity, and that's a sign of understanding, like what you just said. What seemed cute at the time, all of a sudden, now that you've kind of cleared your head, is like, oh my God.
Very cringe, as the children say now. Very cringe.
Yeah. And, it's one of those deals where you've learned something valuable about life, and now it's like, okay, you've got another child. You've got the opportunity to kind of do it a little bit differently. The first one is always the trial run, and I was the trial run with my family too. And I'm sure that things were done differently the second time around with my parents, but I still feel like I turned out okay. And you get back into this, and it's still a few years of habitual drinking, because you told me it was still a few years later before you found yourself in the hotel. So tell me a little bit about this period of time, some of the things that go on, and how it continues to escalate, how you keep maintaining basically and living one of those kind of secret lives that, most people are not really aware of. Did your coworkers or anything like that ever have any suspicion? Anybody ever think that you might have had a problem? Even family members, did anybody ever say anything to you?
No, nobody said anything. And I don't know if they just didn't notice, or if they were wrapped up in their own lives. Probably they were wrapped up in their own lives. When Brody was about 4 months old, my parents actually filed for divorce. So I had a new baby. I had no job, new baby, and my parents were getting divorced after 30 years of marriage. So that was a whole hot mess. But after I went to work, I worked at Travelers. After I went to work at Travelers, I'd been there about 1.5 years, and my husband comes home. And he says, hey, I've been offered a management position in Houston. I think we should move to Houston. And I was like, what? I've just figured out how to do my job, and I'm on track to, hopefully move up there. Like, what? Houston, it's gross there. It's nasty.
It is.
My only impression of Houston, I grew up showing livestock. So I'm like, oh, the Astrodome, NRG, it's so gross down there. That's all that I thought of. So we ended up moving to Houston. So it's another life change. And so we had to put the baby in real daycare, like normal daycare, not just Mother's Day out. We moved basically 4 hours away from the closest family member. And as far as the drinking goes, that's actually when it got to the point where it was affecting activities of daily life. We would come home from being stuck in traffic for forever. We just picked up the baby from daycare, minutes before, the daycare closed. And we'd put him down because we only got to see him for basically an hour because, baby, 2.5-year-olds go to bed at 7:30. So after he went to bed, it was drinking time. It was wine time. It was share a bottle of wine time. And we did that every night for years. And that was not healthy. And then on the weekends, we would go to all these breweries. Because I don't know the last time you were at a brewery, but it probably had a playground. That's how they operate down here, because that way the kids can entertain themselves. So mom and dad get shit-faced. Sorry, use a curse word. But that's how they operate. And so we were having fun during the week and lots of fun on the weekends. And I would show up to church hungover, but nobody could tell because I was a great faker. I just smiled a lot, just tried not to move very fast. Because if I moved too fast, things reappeared. But yeah, that was our life, unfortunately.
Well, that's the lives of many. And, like you say, there's many different transitions throughout the course of life, many things that change the entire situation that you find yourself in. And we're going to fast forward a little bit now. We're going to start talking about some cool, fun stuff. But let's talk about the final straw. You started the story off by saying you're in Colorado, you're at a beautiful hotel. You get so drunk that you find yourself, basically talking to God. And at that moment, you decide, that's it. I've had enough. And when people get to that point, sometimes, in many cases, people don't get to that point until it's way too late. But you were able to get to that point before you got to the very worst. And you make this decision. And one thing that you've been consistent with throughout this entire journey is you've mentioned, your husband has been there with you. You guys drink together. You guys kind of get into this stuff together. When you make this decision, you're laying on the floor, you're prying your hair up off the floor. You're looking in the mirror saying, oh my gosh, this is it. How does this conversation go when you tell your husband, hey, guess what? I just made a decision a second ago that we're going to completely change. My entire life is going to change. Is this something that he was completely on board with? Was this something that you had to kind of convince? How did that story go for you when you decided enough is enough?
Well, he didn't think that I had tried to quit drinking a long time, for years. I would stop for about 2 weeks and then something stressful would happen and I would just start drinking again. And he did not think I was serious. I hate flying, FYI. I hate it. I wish I could do anything but. And we were about to get on the plane and he was like, are you sure you don't want a margarita? And I was like, no, I'm good. And come to find out, he wasn't drinking as much as I thought he was. We would go to like a brewery. I would have like 3 beers and he would have maybe half of his because he knew that somebody had to get us home. So he wasn't drinking as much as I thought he was. But he told me like, hey, if you're serious about this no drinking thing, I'll quit drinking too, and we'll just see how it goes. So that's what he did. And he stopped drinking. He stopped drinking. And then about 18 months later, he got asked if he wanted to be a deacon at our church. And one of the qualifications of that is while you're on active deacon service, you can't drink. And, they asked him when they were doing the interview process, well, is that going to be a problem for you? And they're like, no, Emily's an alcoholic, so we don't drink anymore. So it's no problem for me. And the guys of the church were like, what? Emily, what? and he was like, yeah, she had a problem with alcohol, but she doesn't drink anymore. And so it didn't affect him. But yeah, he's been a great support system. So he's been nothing but supportive, and he's very supportive of me being on podcasts and me doing my pageant stuff. He actually took our 3-year-old to Chick-fil-A, which I don't know if you know this, but Chick-fil-A is like the hotbed of all the children, especially because it's spring break. So he is weathering the storm of Chick-fil-A right now.
Much respect. I can appreciate that. As someone that loves to go to Chick-fil-A, I know how stressful that can be at times. So that is absolutely amazing. And it's awesome that you have that support and that your husband was there and said, look, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I think the fact that he was approached by the church is just another sign from God. You know, like you said, this is something that spoke to you when you were at your lowest point there. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. So you guys have transitioned now into this new life, and you have decided, okay, I'm done. I don't want to drink anymore. I know that this is like the hardest thing to stop doing. I know a lot of people in life, and I've met several friends and people throughout the course of my life that have tried to stop and they haven't been successful, or they've gone to, you know, rehabilitation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me like you didn't have that. You just kind of one day said, hey, I'm not going to drink anymore.
When we got home, I wanted to go to AA, because that's what everybody does when they're trying to stop drinking, right? They go to AA. And there weren't really any AA meetings close to me. And then I was like, maybe, you know, they had AA online because it was COVID times, but the idea of sharing like things on the internet to random people on Zoom I wasn't into that.
Super crazy, right, Emily?
Yeah,
super crazy. Here we are
5 years later. But you know, it was like, I don't want to tell people my deepest, darkest secrets that I don't know who they are. And then I was like, maybe I should go to a treatment facility, maybe do like an outpatient thing. And there weren't any facilities around me, because let's be honest, I live in a fluffy suburb. It's called Cinco Ranch. And there, you know, if you have a house that's worth $500,000 or $300,000, do you want a treatment facility for alcohol and substance use disorder in your neighborhood? You do not. So all of the facilities were in real Houston, you know, 20, 25 miles away from me. So there were no options. And what I ended up doing is I just read a lot of books. I read Alan Carr's The Easy Way to Quit Drinking. There's also another book I read called Quit Like a Woman. And then I read the Bible 3 times. And I had no idea, you know, the Bible was not really written in today's language, as we all know. So I had like little to no, I read it. I didn't 100% understand some of it, but I did it. I read it. And that's really how I started getting going, honestly.
Yeah, and that's very inspiring. I'll be honest, because I don't know too many people that can say that and then stay the course and actually do it. So congratulations to you for that. That's an amazing accomplishment. And I just, you know, that's awesome. I can't even really say anything other than that's just awesome. Good for you. So now you've got a completely different perspective on life, because the further you get away from your drinking habit, your head starts to clear a little bit. You start to see things for what they are in reality. Tell me about this next chapter now, where you've decided, hey, I'm living a different life. We're going to do some other things. What kind of stuff did you do to fill your time that you were, you know, for the last 15 years, you were, you know, just kind of staying at the house and drinking with?
Yeah. So when we moved here to Houston, I had started going to a boot camp, because amazingly, I was over 200 pounds, right? Drinking every night. Yeah. And you know, when you drink, you eat. And when you eat queso and chips from Torchy's, because it's the best. Just going to be honest. It's even
It
better.
is. Torchies, if y'all want to throw a sponsorship this way, we got you.
Yeah, sponsor him, sponsor Chuck, sponsor me. It'd be great. I'll even eat all the queso on television. But it was a good group. I made good friends through that, and eventually our boot camp got shut down because our teacher decided to homeschool her children, and it was too much for her to operate on her own. But we started going to another boot camp. It's called Burn Boot Camp, and they have them all around. But I got, when I stopped drinking, I made a commitment to go to the gym until I had this baby. Oh yeah, I was pregnant too, by the way. So after we got home, we call Brady Carl our miracle baby because we don't know how he appeared. I stopped drinking, and before we knew it, I was pregnant. We don't know how he appeared. We really don't. So the first year I was trying to get sober, I was reading all these books, and I was also pregnant. And when you're pregnant, you don't drink because, you see all the horrible pictures. And I had made a commitment that after I had him, I was going to breastfeed him as much as I could. So, and I wasn't going to drink the dark beer like I did the first time. And so it was a trippy time, but I had made all these friends at boot camp, and I told them I used to have a problem with alcohol. I'm trying not to have any more problems with alcohol, and they were very supportive. And anytime we would go out, they would, ask me like, oh, hey, what are you going to get to drink? Do you want a Sprite? Do you want us to tell them to put like a lime on the side so it looks like everybody else? Do you want to try a non-alcoholic beer? If you do, I'll order one too. So great group of girls. And if it wasn't for them, this transition would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, that's awesome that you found a group that was there for you, that showed you that kind of support. And I like what you just said about, do you want us to put a lime on it so it looks, because sometimes when you get into a group like that, you not only do you have the tendency sometimes to kind of think, well, just one isn't going to hurt, but also I think there's a social stigma that, you're the one that's ordering the iced tea when everybody else is ordering Jack and Coke. And you wonder how that's going to go. Am I still going to be fitting in with the group? Are they still going to think I'm cool? Are they going to think I'm not cool at all because I'm not doing this? And I think it's crucial to have friends like that support you and say, hey, look, we understand and we want to make sure that you're good. So that's awesome. But did you ever have those feelings inside your own mind when you were there?
Oh yeah. Like, well, I'm in insurance, right? And people in insurance, they sometimes like to party. And when you're the only one at the party that isn't partying, you feel different and not in a good way. But I've gotten past that now. I actually feel sorry for people that have to have a couple of beers before they talk to anybody. I don't require that anymore. I did back in the day. I thought I needed that. I thought, social lubrication, I guess, so to speak. But I don't need that. And those people really don't need it either. But we've been brainwashed as a society that in order to talk to the pretty girl, in order to talk to the hot guy, in order to go up and talk to the boss, you need liquid courage. And you don't really need liquid courage. You just need to have a belief in yourself that you can do it.
Yep, that's valuable right there. And I love that mindset. I love the fact that you're able to maintain and not have any kind of, negative feelings that would lead you back into the negative habits that you were doing, because now you're on your path and you're doing something amazing in life. We started this podcast with you showing me a crown.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about this crown and how this crown was earned, because I've never had a beauty pageant winner on my show. You're the first of those, and now that's going to go on my little list with all the other.
If I had planned it, I went to the gym at 4:30. I was originally going to the 7 a.m. class, but I didn't wake up. Just going to be honest. And I was going to do my lashes and have the big hair. And I was like, we're just going to come as we are. We're going to come with our hair slicked back. And I originally was going to do like big lashes, and wow, I really do look white. Oh, I'm a ghost. Yeah, that was the original plan. But so how I got into the pageants, in January of last year, my father-in-law lost his many years battle with bladder cancer. And my husband and I, we were sitting there at his funeral, just kind of like thinking, what are we, what kind of life are we going to live now? This is, my father-in-law, who's the leader of the family, really, like, what are we going to do now? This is incredibly depressing that he's gone. And my husband asked me, like, what is something crazy you've always wanted to do? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And he was like, well, I want to run with the bulls in Spain. I'm going to look up how we can do that. And I was like, whatever, sure, okay. And he booked us plane tickets to Spain, and started booking hotels, literally, at the memorial, just started doing it. And I was like, all right, cool. And a couple of days later, he was like, no, tell me the crazy thing you want to do. And I had always wanted to try pageants growing up. That's something that, of course, it intrigued me. It intrigues all little girls. I'm just going to be honest. Every little girl wants to do that. But when you grow up in rural Texas and funds are low, you don't get to do those sort of things because the cows eat first, if you know what I mean. So I told him, I'd heard that they had married lady pageants. It's something I've always wanted to try, but it's really stupid. That's probably not what you mean. And his eyes got real big, and he was like, I'd love to say I'm married to a pageant queen. Let's do this. And I didn't really even know where to start. I just started messaging. I got on Instagram because that's where you can find anything, is Instagram. And I started messaging. There's different pageant systems. It's just like there's different insurance carriers for everybody, there's different pageant systems for everybody. And I cold message these pageant directors and these former title holders, and they all answered back to me, telling me, yeah, I did this pageant, it was really great, you should try this, all these things. And so I entered a pageant, and my husband said, go buy the best dress you can. I don't care how much it costs. I bought a dress. I got some interview coaching and some walking coaching, because that's a whole science. It's a whole science. And I competed, didn't place, didn't win, but I had an excellent time. And here I am a year later. I have a crown, and I'm going to my national pageant in July or June. It's in June. Both of those marks start with a J, and sometimes I confuse them. But yeah, it's been a crazy year-long journey. I've booked, I've been on podcasts to kind of help with the interview stuff. I have an interview coach. I have a walking coach. That's the thing. I have a modeling coach, and I had no idea what I was doing. I know a little bit better now what I'm doing, but it's been a great hobby to take up. It's definitely a full family effort, just like anything is, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's very inspiring to just one day say, hey, I want to do this, and then go through it and actually put in all the work to be there and continue on with it. And it's almost like in this last hour, we have seen the full circle transition from you in life, and you've come full circle to where now you're doing this. People can look up to you and say, wow, Emily, I didn't even know that about you. And, I always joke and say millions of people are going to watch Keepin It Rio. I don't know. We'll probably long be gone when 1 million people see it, but my goal is for 1 million people to see it at some point in time. And someone's going to be touched by your story because it's very inspiring. And it's like, wow, she literally pulled herself out of a very dire situation before it got to the absolute rock bottom, and didn't have any, major brushbacks or blowbacks because of the lifestyle that she lived. But now you've gone a completely different direction. You're doing all this other cool stuff. And I just think that's awesome. And I appreciate you telling your story and for being so candid about it, because we literally met like 2 minutes before we hit the record button. So you told me some pretty amazing stuff about yourself, and I really appreciate that. I do want to talk a little bit about a couple other things. We were just briefly discussing your career in insurance. Yeah. I am a roofer, so my relationship with insurance is definitely pretty strong. And I work with insurance carriers on a daily basis, much to my chagrin. And I don't mean that in a negative way towards the industry, but it's just hard as a roofer to do that. So tell me a little bit about that, because some of the people that watch this are in my industry. They could probably benefit from your services. I've got a lot of friends in Houston. So if anybody's watching this and they want to, maybe professionally get a little bit of assistance, tell us a little bit about what you do and how they can make that happen.
Oh, so roofing friends. I work for Texas Mutual during the day, which is the largest provider of workers' compensation insurance in the state of Texas. I can do the whole spiel because I am in marketing, but we call it distribution, but it's marketing. And what I do there is I am a territory manager, which means I talk to agents. I help educate agents on Texas Mutual and all the things that we offer, and to make sure that they have the information so they can assist their clients, whether it's a roofer or a mom and pop gas station or, a fine linen place where you eat food, a restaurant. See, I couldn't think of that name for a second. But my job is to educate agents, and I have agents all over the country. I have agents that they have millions of dollars with Texas Mutual, and then I have agencies where they have 5 policies. So I get to talk to a wide variety of people, and it's super fun and super cool. But if you're interested in buying work comp insurance, you need to talk to your insurance agent, and then they end up submitting they end up submitting the business, and then hopefully you decide to buy work comp insurance and we bond it, and then you're covered. That's the plan.
That's the plan, friends. And I would love to see some people work their way over to Texas Mutual. Like I told you a little bit ago, I've got a business partner and he takes care of all of that stuff for me on the other side. But one day down the road, I'm going to give you a call and I'm going to say, Emily, help me out. I need some workers' comp. My company has grown exponentially, and we've got all kinds of people.
Call your agent, because we don't sell directly to people. So call your insurance agent, and because what will happen is somebody's going to reach out to me on Instagram like, I need work comp insurance. I'm like, well, you need to talk to an insurance agent, my friend, and then have them give me a call, and then I can totally help you. But it's a really fun job. I like it, and I get to work from home. So I'm here when my 9-year-old goes to school, and I'm here when he comes back, which I don't think this job would have existed if it wasn't for COVID, just going to be honest, especially with the demographic of agents I get to serve. And I consider it serving them because they a lot of time don't. Here in Texas, you don't have to have comp. But in all the other states, all 49 other ones, it's required. And so some of our friends, agencies located in like Louisiana or Minnesota or Wisconsin, they don't know how to sell comp to their Texas clients because you don't have to have it. So big part of my job is telling people how to do that.
It's a very important aspect, believe me. As someone that has a high-risk business that is insured to the max, I can certainly appreciate it. And I know that not everybody lives that lifestyle because it is an expense. So that's pretty awesome. And if anybody's watching this and needs some help, now you know what to do. So we appreciate that. And Emily, again, thank you for taking your time to talk to a total stranger for an hour plus and tell your life story, basically from very beginning to the, modern times. I appreciate it. I certainly appreciate and admire the path that you've taken and the progress that you've made to change and be who you are today. And I know you're going to win the pageant in June or July, whenever that may be. So
check-in is June 22nd, and the pageant itself is after that. I don't know why. Let me look that up. Hold on. I need to look like a competent person. Let me pull up my Instagram.
And while you're doing that, watch how I continue to entertain the folks.
Yes.
While Emily's looking this information up, ladies and gentlemen, I can't help. Okay, go ahead.
I got it. Pageant is June 27th. Check in. So it's a whole week-long thing. It's insane. Like you check in, we have a gala that we're going to go to, and you have preliminary competitions to decide who makes finals on the 27th. So it is a week long. It is I've never ran a marathon. I've only run half marathons, but this is a legit marathon. It's not necessarily it's outlasting. So I've got to really get the stamina up for this one because it's a legit week long.
Well, you got this. I have no doubt in my mind you're going to win because that's just the way it goes. So we will check back to you later when you have won this pageant. We'll get your whole story on that on another episode of Keepin It Rio. Before we check out today, there is one thing I need to do, which I always save to the very end because I think you save the best for last. I want to thank my sponsors. My sponsors are roofer.com. And I'll tell you a little bit about Roofer real quick, Emily, because I know you're probably just really dying to know. Roofer is your all-in-one software program for roofing companies of any size. And I'm getting my spiel down pretty good here. They've been my sponsor for 3 years. From the very initial contact with your client, your prospect, all the way to the final payment and everything in between. We're talking measurement reports, proposals, invoicing, ordering your materials directly through the Roofer portal. Roofer does it all, and they are awesome. I always drink some Roofer coffee, and I always wear my Roofer hat because this is the best sponsor that I've ever had in my entire life, and they are the best team in the roofing industry. So thank you, Roofer. Thank you to all the fans who watch. I always jokingly say that, but after 210 episodes, I have a pretty decent little audience now. So to everybody that's watching, I love you guys. Thank you all for watching and showing all the support you do. And I end every podcast with the most corny thing. And like I say, you got to save the best for last. So until next time, which will be next Thursday at 7 p.m., ladies and gentlemen, keep on keeping it Rio. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much. And there will be a brief ad for Roofer. And Emily, if you would stick around for just a couple seconds after the ad goes, we'll just kind of finalize our conversation. So thank you guys very much. We'll see you next week.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payment in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free.